game side of things. I am Lou Agjosh-Cromie, and I am joined for the very first time on the desk by the amazing, the incredible Joe Brown.
Oh, thank you, Lou. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know. I mean, we've known each other for years, obviously. Have a lot of fun conversations, but yes, this is the first time on the desk we get to cast Pokemon together. So this is a dream come true, if you ask me.
Oh, well, we have to remember to cast the game and not just get carried away chatting. I know that I can definitely do that, but national stage, I wouldn't be surprised to see a few sneaky surprises. But jumping out into the fray for Joseph Ugarte is that Kingambit with the Iron Bundle. It's going to get its Quark Drive activated by its Booster Energy, and then on the opposing side, Talonflame and the Fluttermane.
Yeah, and then it looks like the Booster Energy is also activating for Fluttermane to boost its special attack, not its speed. Note there. So obviously right now Iron Bundle is faster. However, because of Justin Burns having access to the Gale Wings Talonflame on the other side, he has priority on the on his Tailwind if he would like for his two Pokemon to outspeed. It is seen as Flying Terra, I believe, on the Kingambit, right? So Flying is definitely the most common version of this, and I wonder if either of these trainers are going to Terra their Kingambits later on in this match.
Well, you have a Kingambit apiece and a Hydro Pump miss, all in the opening turns of this game one. Dazzling Gleam is going to come out from the opposing Fluttermane, does a little bit of damage to both opposing Pokemon, but the key thing I think for Justin here was getting that Kingambit in relatively unscathed. A nice adjustment considering, yes, you mentioned Talonflame can go for that Tailwind, but it just wasn't the position play for Justin here, particularly when you've got Iron Bundle on the field. It's Booster Energy, it's going to be extra speedy. You kind of want to deal with it so you can reap the benefits of your Tailwind later.
Yeah, that was a really smart play from Justin because most people would have assumed he would have just off the rip used Tailwind because he had access to that priority. So by switching in Kingambit and only taking a resisted Iron Head on the switch, and you're in a better spot. Now, did it also help that the Hydro Pump missed? Yeah, for sure. But I just thought that was like a really nice switch from Justin.
Yes, and you know, even if you do connect that Hydro Pump, it's rocking the Assault Vest on there, so it's going to be able to take that much better. We are going to see, however, again, another Dazzling Gleam just chipping away at the opposing Kingambit here, followed up by the Assurance as well, but it's able to hang on. Kingambit being able to fire off that Iron Head and get a KO, where it's able to take all these hits and then dish them out to boot.
Wow, that is, yeah, you hit it, you get the boost with Assurance from the double damage from, you know, being hit prior, but trading away your Fluttermane this early on in this matchup, maybe Justin feels as if it's not too valuable. One, because Iron Bundle is outspeeding it with its Booster Energy, so it can go for Icy Winds and things to make it slower. And two, with the Kingambit opposing on the other side, your Dazzling Gleams are not going to be doing too much because of the Assault Vest there. So trying to have Talonflame get to the field for free instead of switching it in and risking taking damage, now you still have your Gale Wings active.
Yeah, and I love seeing this adjustment. The Amoonguss coming in, not going to be affected by that Sucker Punch switching in, as Talonflame is going to go for the... Oh, it misses the Will-O-Wisp there. Kingambit is going to be able to go for the Assurance onto that opposing Talonflame, do a little bit of damage, but I mean, fantastic play going for that switch in, and then just the miss, you know, it's quite fortunate for that Kingambit.
Yeah, that is brutal for Justin to miss the Will-O-Wisp, but, you know, on Joe's end, he's saying, I missed the Hydro Pump. Yeah. So I think I deserve that Will-O-Wisp miss.
Definitely. Amoonguss is going to go for the Protect here as well. Talonflame this time will find its mark. Second time's the charm in this case onto that opposing Kingambit. Just going to be reducing the attack potential from the Kingambit on Joe's side of the field thanks to the burn. The Kingambit on the opposing side, though, going to go for the Iron Head.
But it goes into that Protect from the Amoonguss, so that's not really going to do anything. And then all that's left is this burn Kingambit, so that Assurance is hardly doing any damage. And so now Justin has put himself in a spot that he doesn't necessarily have to worry about Kingambit as a threat anymore in this matchup thanks to that burn. Barring a critical hit, it's really not going to be doing too much damage to either of Justin's Pokemon there. And if he can kind of ignore it and whittle down the Amoonguss and maybe Iron Bundle and make sure that the Kingambit's not really a threat to him, that might be his best avenue to victory.
I think you make a really good point. Joe's Kingambit now isn't really a threat. The issue is the Amoonguss, and something like a Brave Bird would have been able to deal with that nice and cleanly. So I like the Terrestrialization here from Joe, dropping, its typing and just going for the Dark typing here. It's going to be able to deal, or I should say, sustain this Brave Bird much better than it would have done previously.
Yeah, and then if it's an Assurance follow-up, it does either way. He's double targeting to it. Would have been even stronger if it was Assurance because you have the resisted Dark attack there. But Talonflame does get knocked out on this turn, so Justin is down to his final two Pokemon.
Yeah, and then Amoonguss doing what it does best, putting a Pokemon to sleep, connecting the Spore down onto that opposing Kingambit. And it's a little bit like, you know, Justin goes for a status onto the opposing King Gambit, and then Amoonguss is like, I can do this too, but I'm going to be more disruptive. You're not going to be able to do any damage, let alone reduce stuff. You're going to be asleep.
Great Tusk is the final Pokemon, though, on Justin's end. So we've seen throughout the broadcast today, Great Tusk has been an absolute menace in the right hands. This dark type Amoonguss, a Pokemon usually would not worry about taking a close combat as a poison type. Now it would be a super effective attack that Joe has to be wary of, and it's not necessarily safe to switch it out because you have an Iron Bundle in the back who is an Ice type who would also be weak to that fighting attack.
That's true, but Iron Bundle is a speedy little critter, so maybe when it comes back in, it's going to find a way to deal with this opposing Great Tusk. First of all, however, we are going to see the Terra flying onto that King Gambit, something that has been tried and tested on King Gambits. Amoonguss is going to be going for the Protect, though, just playing that little bit defensively, and I think if you're Joe at this point, you're probably quite happy for this King Gambit to go down. Earthquake is going to come out from Justin's. Great Tusk here, nice of the King Gambit on his side, can avoid it thanks to having a flying type now, and it's going to be able to connect and deal with the King Gambit on Joe's side. I think I've said King Gambit multiple times. It's like it's not even a word anymore.
I don't think you've said it enough, personally.
King Gambit, King Gambit.
That's just me. So now the King Gambit is still asleep, even though it terrestrialized, so you would lose that that fighting weakness, obviously, which is a giant detriment to King Gambit as a Dark and Steel type, if he is expecting the Great Tusk to be the 4th slot on Joe's end. However, you are still weak to Iron Bundles, Icy Winds, or Freeze Drive, so it's not necessarily fully safe for Justin. It's just a little bit safer than than against the Great Tusk. And with these 2 Pokemon left, it really did make the most sense to terrestrialize King Gambit in this slot because you don't really need to with the Great Tusk.
Yeah, I completely agree. The one issue you've got to face with the Great Tusk as well is they're running those Focus Sashes. So you need to find a way to be able to chip that away so you can pick up the KO later. But the risk, like you've said, is Great Tusk is going to be able to deal out big damage of its own as well. There may not be the potential for Joe to be able to get the critical KO. He does go for the Freeze Drive, Joe, and I mean, that's one way to break a Focus Sash.
Yeah, for sure. Brings him down to 1 HP. So any other damage, if it's an EQ or any attack. Oh, and the freeze, too. Justin cannot believe it. His last name is Burns, but his Pokemon gets frozen solid.
That is amazing. Look at the face on that opposing Great Tusk. It wasn't expecting that either. King Gambit's going to follow up here with a Terra Blast, try and get a little bit of retribution for its frozen comrade into the opposing Great Tusk, but there's going to be no potential for a Status Infliction here. I mean, we've seen a burn, we've seen sleep. All we're missing is a para.
Yeah, that is, we might need Porygon too to help us out there
yeah,
with the try attack, maybe. But that is a disastrous freeze there. It is only a 10% chance, but just like we saw with Tolar Web in Orlando Regionals,
yes.
that freeze drive feels like it freezes a lot more than 10% because that really helped out Joe. It would have been another attack for Great Tusk, even if it doesn't knock out the opposing Great Tusk, but Iron Bundle's not too bulky to begin with, so that might have been enough to knock it out, and you don't have to waste this attack onto Iron Bundle this turn. That could have been another attack to Great Tusk.
Yeah, and speaking of, lack of bulk, it's able to go down straight away to that Sucker Punch, and Great Tusk goes down as well to the opposing Great Tusk here. So a KO apiece for both of these trainers.
Now it is just the King Gambit left against Amoonguss and Great Tusk. This is advantageous since King Gambit is a flying type into the Great Tusk who is fighting, and the Amoonguss who is already half health. The thing you have to worry about is that at any point, he saw the Ice Spinner, so as long as Amoonguss is redirecting those attacks away towards its slot, the Great Tusk for Joe is able to Ice Spinner into this flying type King Gambit.
Yeah, that's a great observation. At the end of the day, there really isn't a lot that the King Gambit can do here. It's only got those single target attacks. So like you said, the Amoonguss can just go for that redirection, protect up the Great Tusk that's able to deal the heavy damage in the form of that Ice Spinner into that opposing King Gambit. Not going to be able to get the KO against it, but there's nothing to stop Joe for going for the same strat the next turn.
I was going to say he needs a crit or something to get rid of the Amoonguss, because now he is able to just do the exact same thing again. And by Joe having Ice Spinner where most other Great Tusks don't, it's usually 2 ground attacks and a fighting attack, which would be awful into a flying type. But instead, now it can help him win this game.
Yeah, we actually saw that earlier with the Great Tusk going down into a flying Dragonite, and it was just so difficult to be able to deal damage. So I really like, as you said on Joe here, having the Ice Spinner, just being able to give it that flexibility to deal with all the flying and dragon types that we do see in the meta at the moment.
And then you have Sucker Punch because you're slower, but it is resisted, so it does no damage.
Exactly, and Great Tusk going to be able to clean this up, taking game 1 for Joseph Ugarte. I mean, what an amazing game 1 to come out here.
Yeah, that was really back and forth on multiple status conditions. Hydro Pump miss, Will-O-Wisp miss as well. Like, that game really ran the gambit, if you will, of VGC. And I think the key turn to me was when Joe Dark Terra'd his Amoonguss.
I agree.
think that is the quintessential use of terrestrialization. You saw a flying type on the other end, and then you have the dark type where if you stayed neutral, you would have been having neutral hits from Assurance. So to cover both of those options, now Assurance is resisted, and you are no longer weak to Brave Bird. So I think that's just like anyone watching at home who's trying to understand the viability of terrestrialization. Joe just used it perfectly in game 1.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant kind of observation from Joe's playstyle here. You can use Terra both offensively to get that extra damage. You know, we saw Stefan Mott do that previously with his Talonflame, but Joe was able to show again the classic combination of using it defensively, just protecting up that little Amoonguss, and that's what adds a whole new layer of creativity, but also masterful play to the Pokemon meta at the moment with the introduction of Terra types. I mean, going into this game too, do you think Justin's going to shake things up, or do you think that the Pokemon he brought were good? I mean, I really liked seeing things like the Fluttermane coming out into the front. It just unfortunately didn't get the ball rolling as much as Justin wanted.
It is difficult as this is somewhat of a pseudo mirror match, right? You have very similar Pokemon, Glamora and Iron Bundle, Great Tusk as well, and the Kingambit really. So it's tough to make adjustments because it's like the Pokemon kind of accomplish the same thing on each side. I think Justin did do a great job in that match of clawing it back in after that great terrestrialization from Joe. However, the freeze was really gigantic there because you never know what would have happened. Maybe the Great Tusk is down to 10 HP if he doesn't get frozen, and then Sucker Punch is enough to clean it out, right? So it's something that Justin can't really play around. So I don't think the Pokemon were the wrong choice. It's just the unfortunate nature of freeze dry.
Yeah, the dice rolls were not in his favor, let's say, but that's why we play a best of 3. And here goes game 2. Joe Ugarte leading out with that Iron Bundle and the Amoonguss, and on the opposing side for Justin, Great Tusk and Kingambit, unthawed, as it were.
And it looks like immediately Joe understands his strategy. He might have a lot of experience in this type of matchup because that Dark Terra Amoonguss was so pivotal for him in game 1. When you're facing down against a potential flying type Kingambit with Terra Blast, it has access to it to hit you super effectively as the grass type. You can use that defensively to switch around. So I think that makes the most sense for Joe. However, once you become a dark type, you are weak to a close combat from Great Tusk on Justin's end there. So this could be a very tough play if Justin calls the Terra.
Yeah, how's it going to go? It's that odd 50-50 where, like you said, you could be being more defensive against one, but then more vulnerable to the other. Iron Bundle's going to kick things off first of all with another freeze dry, taking Great Tusk down to its focus sash. Looks like there isn't going to be a freeze this time. However, Great Tusk is going to hang on and fire off a close combat into the Iron Bundle. Gets the one-hit KO against it, but Amoonguss able to dodge out of the way of that close combat.
That is huge. Obviously, no focus sash means that Iron Bundle is down. You don't have Icy Wind later on to try to slow down Fluttermane if it is in the back. And if you get a flinch on Iron Head, there's no Spore. No.
Amoonguss powering through, putting that Kingambit to sleep so it cannot deal these little bits of damage that is able to dish out. The key thing I think as well is Joe, needed to make sure that Amoonguss was hanging around. It was such a pivotal support Pokemon, being able to put Pokemon to sleep, having the redirection, particularly when paired up with the Great Tusk.
Yeah, I think this turn, we know Kingambit is going to be forced to stay asleep. And does Justin sacrifice his Great Tusk, knowing it only has 1 HP remaining and anything will knock it out? And so, or do you preserve it for later, switch something in defensively so you can have a late game Earthquake or a late game close combat? I think it's a very difficult position for Justin to be in. He has not terrestrialized yet, and we know that his Fluttermane is Terra Steel, which is what Alex Underhill had as well. So I think that might be a way you might want to preserve your Terra for later. And the double switch for Justin, okay.
I mean, you asked the question, Joe, and he's given you the answer. He thinks switching out that Great Tusk. No Fluttermane. It's going to be the Glamora coming in. A nice double switch from Justin, but that's often risky. The Ice Spin is going to connect down into Talonflame. It's able to take it reasonably well, does about a third of damage, but Amoonguss just throwing spores left, right, and center puts Glamora straight to sleep. What a read, knowing that Kingambit was going to switch out.
What a great call from Joe, because Glamora, it is Terra Grass. It has access to it. If it was able to terrestrialize, you'd ignore the Rage Powders and ignore being put to sleep from Spore. But on the switch in, I think also Amoonguss really had nothing better to do, too, on that switch, so you might as well cover for the Kingambit switch.
Yeah, might as well. And speaking of King Gambit, now Joe is going to unleash his own one here as Talonflame goes for the Will-O-Wisp. It's going to connect down onto the opposing Great Tusk here. Going to be able to deal a little bit of damage and critically break that Focus Sash, as well as weakening the attack stat on Great Tusk. I mean, Headlong Rush, even on a burn, is still going to get the one-hit KO of Glamora. 4 times super effective. Goodbye.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate timing for Justin on the switch. And he does get the Toxic Debris, and Amoonguss is no longer a poison type when it switches back in as Mono Dark now, thanks to its Terra. So that will poison it on the switch, and that could be another status we didn't actually see in the first one.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Was poison, so that would be nice to see there. But Justin has lost that Glamora, and now with Great Tusk at 1 HP as well, King Gambit can Sucker Punch it at any point to try to knock it out. Is there a turn where Justin maybe protect Great Tusk, Will-O-Wisp the King Gambit, so the Sucker Punch fails? That could be an option, but it's just delaying the inevitable, because even if you're -6 and burned and terrible attack stat, the Sucker Punch, all it has to do is the 1 HP left on Great Tusk.
And you spoke about it, there it is. The Great Tusk is down and out for Justin, leaving just the King Gambit and the Talonflame left on Justin's side of the field. I mean, Talonflame's definitely got an uphill battle. It can go for the burn, sure, but at the end of the day, this is only chip damage, and even burn, King Gambit and Great Tusk are going to be able to deal with this opposing Talonflame some way or other. Ice Spin are going to be able to connect. It's going to be able to push Talonflame below 50%, and this is the issue with Talonflame. It may be able to deal heavy damage, but it's also very fragile, so even with the burns, these two Pokemon are going to be able to find a way to deal with it.
But that's Justin needed that Will-O-Wisp to connect to get back into this game, because now both of these physical attackers have their damage output mitigated against King Gambit. It does have to sleep. He did switch it out beforehand before going to using that first turn to sleep, so King Gambit is not a threat right now. But once it does wake up, theoretically, the Terra flying into Great Tusk, as well as being pretty strong into Amoonguss as well, with the Iron Head as a neutral attack, is pretty. That's actually pretty funny to see Amoonguss be poisoned.
Not something you see every day, right, Joe? I mean, that's a unique combination for the Amoonguss. But hey, it's going to have to get used to it when there are Glamoras running around and we're in a Terra format. King Gambit's going to go for Terra flying here as well, trying to apply a little bit more pressure onto the opposing side of the field, maybe with something like that Terra Blast. As Talonflame says, hey, I got flying type moves too. I'm going to Brave Bird into that Amoonguss, which does very little damage though.
Yeah, that was definitely targeted for the Great Tusk, but the Dark type on the switch, it means that it's not doing too much damage. The Assurance actually does a lot there through the burn. I know King Gambit is strong and Talonflame's kind of frail, but like you would have thought, maybe if it hangs on with like 1 HP or something, you have access the next turn to one more attack, which is what Justin needed. But now it's a 3-on-1 with his sleeping King Gambit. Yeah,
that's the thing. King Gambit's the wrong time to take a nap. Come on, you need to wake up, start dealing some damage. But again, you've got this amazing position from Joe's perspective where you can just Rage Powder away all the single target moves that King Gambit's got. Yes, it's good. Waking up, that's good. Goes for the Iron Head, doesn't get a KO. And now Joe can just really go through and chip away at the opposing King Gambit. Yes, his King Gambit doesn't have a lot to deal with it right now, but, there's time.
Okay, so that if he got the crit, that would have been huge, because he would have knocked it out right away. Amoonguss gets knocked out next turn from poison if he doesn't switch. He's willing to sacrifice it in case the Terra Blast chooses that slot, because you don't want Great Tusk to take all that damage.
True.
And there it is.
There we go. Terra Blast coming out from Justin Burns is going to connect down onto the Amoonguss. Like you said, happy to sacrifice it just to preserve Great Tusk in the back for the end game.
And so he's trying to bring it back here. King Gambit versus the world. It's now a 2-on-1 against a Great Tusk and then Joe's King Gambit. But remember, they are burned. That Assurance is not a lot of damage. It will be more once Great Tusk hits it first, because even if it's burned, you are still getting the double damage from Assurance. But on its own, that damage output is really not strong. However, if Great Tusk wants to go for the attack, it's burned Ice Spinner. It's not doing as much. Joe has to call that the Terra Blast goes into this slot.
Let's see. Great Tusk is going for the Protect. King Gambit goes for the Terra Blast into the Protect on the Great Tusk here. So King Gambit's going to be able to get a little bit more damage onto the opposing foe.
Oh, that's
crit.
a critical hit Iron Head, actually.
Oh.
So insult to injury there
definitely.
that you can crit through with the Brave, or through the burn there. Now you are in a spot Joe can really safely double protect. I mean, you have the 30% chance, but this does let the Terra Blast go into that slot. But the combination Ice Spinner and Assurance, even burned, should be a lot of damage.
Well, Terra Blast going to come out from the King Gambit. This time it's going to be able to find its mark on that Great Tusk, but it's not enough to be able to get the KO, and this is where Joe can just jump onto the offensive here. It's a slither of HP that opposing King Gambit is on here. Great Tusk and the King Gambit have the potential to deal with Justin's one.
Yeah, and then because of the Assault Vest, you don't have Protect.
Yes.
He obviously doesn't know that the burn wouldn't knock out, but it is low enough that you kind of wonder, can I just let it burn?
Yeah.
And there is the cancellation. Justin understands.